Good to go. Okay, afternoon everyone. I've got a lunchtime slot, just after lunchtime is nice. Hopefully we'll keep you awake and engaged. I don't know if you've had a chance to have a look at this. A couple of questions here I want you to reflect on. One, what event in your life had a big influence on who you are today? Reflect on the emotions you experienced. You won't be asked to share that. On the second one, what do you value? Think about things that make you fulfilled, contented or happy, but also things that make you sad, angry or frustrated. Okay? So think about that and you're asked to share that in a small group later. I'm going to talk about team engagement and alignment. I was very lucky. From about 98 to 2010, I worked in an organisation where the employees are very engaged, very, very engaged. And in fact, autonomy is a big part of what we did. And in fact, that organisation, Conchango, is no longer around anymore, spawned quite a few organisations. Learning Connections, you might see out the front. Also Ripple Rock, some people sat at the back as well. Red Badger, Flux, lots of people there who actually set their own companies up, very autonomous and doing rather well for themselves. And of course, Orgology as well. So this is me, Matt Wright, it's my family. My wife Ruth, my daughter Sophie, who's going through her GCSEs right now, going through some revision. I do a lot of Scrum, I'm a Scrum trainer, and she has a burn down chart for her topics towards the end of revision week. It's doing quite a lot at the moment, it's under the chart, it's good. My son Tom, he plays quite a lot of football. And through that, I think I got quite interested in kind of performance generally. He plays a lot of football for an academy. It's quite a high level. So I got very interested in performance generally, and that under pressure as well. I started looking at things probably a bit outside the agile sphere, about how people work together, what makes people tick, what makes people drive, what's the motivation behind things. And also I worked with a sports psychologist for some while. So that was quite interesting too. I'm going to talk to you about team engagement and alignment, because in the last couple of years or so, I've been working, so I've done a lot of coaching, probably since about 2004, worked with agile teams. And the last 2 or 3 coaching gigs, I just found that a lot of process stuff was done, but maybe sort of below the head, the people didn't really sort of buy into it either, the behaviours didn't really shift. So I got really interested in behavioural change and what makes people shift their behaviours. So I've been a bit of a journey. I've trained as a life coach, which is interesting. I've got a whole new group of friends out of that. And also I've started training as a relationship coach too. So looking after the third entity, relationships between people and how they interact. And some of that's going to come out in this talk too. And also in quite a lot of reading, and some of that's going to come out in this talk too. We've got quite a lot to cover in a short amount of time. So hopefully I don't talk too fast. I'll try and slow down a little bit after lunch. So we're going to talk about what is a team first off. Did anyone go to Eben's talk yesterday? Hands up, just 1 or 2 of you. Okay, so I'm going to repeat a little bit. Eben was there, thank you. I just to say, what is a team? Because that's quite important. If you think about team engagement and alignment, what is the team? We're also going to look about alignment, the basis of team engagement. Pretty much that building block needs to be in place as a basis. Deepening work, team engagement through meaningful work. What gives meaning to work? Relationship and connections between people. What's important about those? And getting progress and meaningful work as well. So all those things. And within this, what I always try and do with my talks is give you something small or something, a technique you can go away, take away and start trying. So some stuff in here, hopefully will be useful for you when you leave the conference. So, what's the difference between a team and a group? Any ideas? Working together, not working together, yeah. Purpose, yeah. Purpose is a big part of being a team rather than just a group of people. Yeah. Anything else? Size, yeah. A group can be quite big. A team generally follows the rule 7 plus or minus 2. Yeah.
People you work with and you trust them.
Yeah, trust is a good thing too. A bit of trust between that. You can have that in a group as well.
You know them.
You know them. Hopefully, you know people you work with. Yeah. You can have that both in a group and a team. So interestingly enough, independently of anything, so Scrum talks about teams, okay, and it's quite well defined. But I think independently of that, as far as I know. I don't know many people talk about a guy called Richard Hackman, who did quite a lot of research on teams, about what a team was and what it needs, and the kind of conditions for a team. So Eben talked about it yesterday. I'm going to talk about it briefly, just to set a context. Because even though you've got a team, you may not be treating them as a real team. So it may not be fitting criteria. So Richard looked at conditions for high-performing teams. In 2002, he published his book, based on 30 years of research. Teams who, from aircraft industry, some development teams, Lots of other teams he looked at, sorry?
Oil rigs,
lots of other teams he looked at. And most of what he looked at, pretty much most of them didn't perform. Out of the 33 teams I looked at, 4 of them were a high-performing team. It's interesting to say why some teams don't work. Why don't teams work? So what he found was that people that don't perform when the thing's been set up wrongly in supporting them or designing them, and also he found that no leader can make a team perform well, but they can set the conditions for great performance and increase the likelihood that they will. So what does he come up with? So there are some conditions. One of them is being a real team. So they've got a shared task that they're working on. The team are bounded. People know who's on the team, who's not on the team. They're stable, so not changing all the time. And they're interdependent. So they're dependent on each other for doing the work. Okay? So not different from between the people in the team. So interdependence on doing the work. They rely on each other to do the work. They have a compelling direction. So purpose, someone brought this up before, compelling direction. They have clear goals. And they clearly state how the team contributes to the organisation, so they're aware of their own contribution to the overall mission. And we'll look at this later because quite a few surveys have highlighted this as well, as late as 2012. Enabling structure. So interesting thing about this, they've got compelling collective work products. Yeah. The task is meaningful to the individual. We'll look at meaning later. Autonomy is good, but the boundaries need to be clearly understood. To be clear of what's inside their bound and what isn't inside their bound. And the norms of conduct, how they behave with each other too. And that's really important too. In fact, Google have just done revealed some research about some teams, and they found that one of the biggest differences with norms is the conduct, the standards of behaviour. It's one of the last things we'll look at as well. I'll give you some techniques around that. And also, a big thing that maybe Scrum doesn't talk about is a supportive context around the outside. So rewards for team performance, not individual performance. Training and technical expertise when it's needed. The team has to be fitness for a team. Information is readily available to provide data and sufficient material resources to do their work. All pretty obvious stuff, right? Maybe not always given to teams. And the last thing, great thing for any agile coach out there, Richard says after 30 years of research, they need expert coaching. That must be readily available on demand. The typing timing is important, but the best times for coaching are the beginning for some startup stuff, the middle to reflect on what they're doing, and at the end as well. Okay. So first off, alignment is the basis of team engagement. So getting people aligned is really important. So Richard was saying about that earlier on. So one of the biggest causes of disengagement is that people don't understand how they fit into the overall organisation. I've got some data here somewhere, but it comes later. When they don't understand what's happening, how the work affects on them, and they don't understand the roles they play, so they start to become disengaged in that as well. So there's been some research on that, so I'll bring this up, some research on that. So Metroscope did a survey in 2012. They polled organisations. Only 14% report their employees have a good understanding of their company's strategy and their direction. 14%, it's pretty small. And then Forbes did another survey in 2013 of 20 Australian countries. And even in high-performing companies with a very clearly stated public strategy, only a third of their employees can correctly identify their company's strategy. They don't know how they fit into the overall. It's just really important. If you want to align your team members or get some engagement, them understanding how they play into the bigger picture is a good idea. One way you could do that, there's lots of ways you could do that. One option might be a guy called Derek Lusthurst, who's ex-Legal & General. We've got quite a bit of research here from organisations, most of them from the States, from Harvard generally. This is probably the only British reference I've got. He talks about understanding where the strategy came from. So individuals understanding what were the other options you'd thought about, why were they rejected, and what else did you think of? So just having your team, sitting them down, helping understand the strategy and asking those questions, maybe if you're someone on the product or the customer side, trying to get that understanding should lay groundwork for trust, transparency and understanding. And something else I found out recently, deep democracy. Everyone in the system has a voice. So everyone needs to have a voice, and understanding is a good thing to let everyone understand what's going on. So if they understand that and they've thought about that, and investigated that, you've got some sort of understanding of what they add to the overall organisation. Now, deepening that, you can deepen that a little bit further by giving it some meaning. So they understand why you're doing it. How do I get a bit more meaning around this? Now, meaningful work doesn't have to be of profound importance to society. It doesn't have to go and change the world. What it does mean is that you as an individual perceive you're contributing value to something or someone who matters, yourself, your family, or your team. And in fact, Steve Jobs did this to John Scully in about 1982, I think. John Scully was an executive at Pepsi. He said to him, do you want to carry on selling sugared water, or do you want a chance to change the world? He tried to give it some meaning to him. It was quite a big thing for them. He gave that stuff some meaning. So meaning might just be a useful and high quality product. Meaning might be a provider service to your community or focus on customer care. I recently was talking to another football dad on the sidelines. It gets pretty boring watching football all the time. Talk about other things. And he'd been working with a company called Appliances Online. And interestingly enough, what they do at Appliances Online, if each of their customer care people, they tell them, treat the people who are complaining like your grandma. And that's quite a nice bit of connection, making it meaningful for them. And also, anyone that goes to visit customer sites, they tell them, when you come home in the evening, what can you tell your family and friends that you've been proud of what you've done today? Again, gives the work some meaning for them as well, a bit of purpose around it. Make it personal. So one way of doing that, maybe, this could help out, another little technique here, is maybe having a purpose statement. So a purpose statement is to think about what we're doing for someone else. So some bigger examples here for a whole organisation. Got an example for a team in a second. But ING, empower people to stay one step ahead in life and business. And Kellogg's, nourish families so they can flourish and thrive. And also, if you can, with a statement from a team, try and include some personal goals as well they can support in that, so making it personal. So here's an example. I worked with an organisation, a team a while ago, and their overall product purpose. So within the organisation, they had a bigger product, and that's kind of aligned to their strategic goals. The bigger product, they had to increase their reach of their current customers. They had to increase engagement, so it's ongoing engagement and re-engaging, revisits on their website. And also resources, like everybody else, they had to do more with less, because the budgets were being cut all the time. So the team came up with the purpose of, we want to build a tool that enables high uptake of easy-to-make, high-quality formats. Doesn't mean an awful lot to me, but to them, that meant an awful lot. They're making a difference to people who are editing and creating high-quality formats, and that's what they did. They built tools for them to make it easier. So within that, we set some measures up. So interesting enough, I went to Matt's talk earlier on, which I found very interesting, by the way. It's kind of aligns with some of that around some measures. You say, okay, if you want to set a purpose, let's just make sure we can see how much progress you're making towards that as well, to see if what you're doing is making a difference, the difference you think. So we had some things around uptake, number of users, number of content items created, so fitness, I think Matt called it fitness. High quality formats, the percentage of people finishing a quiz, or the quality of the output. Some of these formats are quizzes. And they should be easy. How long it took to design them, the quality of feedback, low number of support requests. So all those things we try to make a bit personal and make some connection around it as well, and get some movement around that as well. So when we do this with teams, we take a little bit of time to do this. This is a bit of coaching you might do at the beginning, as Ricky Chapman says, to set teams up. It's a really good idea to understand how they play into the overall strategy, but also what it means to them. What's the purpose behind that? And that may take about an hour or more to get out with a team and let them come up with it, one of you individuals. It can take some time sometimes, but they generally will come up with something. You can strip work of its meaning. There's some things out there that maybe this might have happened to your team. So if you find that teams aren't engaged or individuals aren't engaged, some of these things might have happened in the past. If you dismiss the importance of employees' works or ideas, you don't support their ideas. Destroy a sense of ownership. Reassigning people halfway through a project, take them off one project, put them to another project. Or solutionising for teams, doing the work for them. People like to solve problems. They like to be engaged around that. The work may never see the light of day. There's nothing more demotivating, I think, than working on a project, having it canned or cancelled and moving off and no one ever seeing the value of your work, not any value at all. I spent the last year not doing anything of value. Neglect to inform team members of changing customer priorities. even late, if they're very late, it does strip the meaning from work for the teams. Probably a bit of annoyance around that as well. And also confusion of long or short-term goals. Constraints of ownership, lacking resources, all the things that Richard Hackman said you need to support. Some of those things you can strip the meaning from work. So no, you can do all this. Even if you do all this stuff for the team and set them up, these things may be happening. So again, as a coach, try and protect the team from this kind of stuff too. Okay. So Gallup do a survey every year. And Gallup does a survey, engagement at work, and it covers off around about 350,000 people, I believe. Yeah. And in that work, Gallup have identified one of the biggest issues with disengagement is a relationship with their direct boss. Probably 70% of the variance of engagement is their relationship with their boss. So actually relationships are really, really important. Not only with your team members, but your direct boss as well. There's been other research around the progress as well on work that you do and how you get on with your teammates. If you don't get on with your team that well, actually the mood kind of comes down a little bit and it doesn't really support that healthy ongoing work. And actually some of that you take home with you as well. There's a bit of an overspill maybe to your family, with your friends. So relationships and connection are pretty important. And I heard of a guy who does lots of coaching, and he's big on that. And one of the biggest needs for people is actually, Maslow as well, hierarchy of needs is connection with people, relationships. People need it. It's like food. People need that. And what's interesting is the quality of relationships is really important. So I asked a question early on about thinking about what's valuable to you, what makes you happy or sad or angry or frustrated. And they're trying to get out what's important to you, how you want to be with other people, the values you have, your personal values. So what you think about is if you're honouring those values, how would you be with other people? If I was honouring your own values, how would you be with the other people around you? I want you to get into groups of 3 or 4 and have a chat and see if you can agree a set of team values of how you want to operate together. So a shared set of values of how you want to be with each other. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes, about 3 or 4 minutes for that, and we'll reflect on that. So have a go at doing that. Self-organising, groups of 3 or 4. Do you want these guys? You might have to turn around, yeah.
Purpose of the team, yeah? That's what good.
Yeah.
Around purpose.
So talk about it in the team. So talk about your own personal values and see if you can find out values that you share between you and how you want to be with each other. So maybe respectful, honest, integrity comes up for me quite a lot. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. So I get a bit annoyed when other people don't do it.
If you've got someone
Where you can make your text a little bit bigger.
Not right now. The projector's really small.
Oh, okay. Because I can hardly read the writing.
No.
That one's fine. It's when you go onto the other side.
I'll see what I can do. Okay, just finish off your conversations there. Okay. Shh. Right. Okay. What kind of things did you come up with? What kind of shared values did you come up with? Just shout something out. Openness, honesty, passion.
And supportiveness to
Great words, like the last one. Brilliant. Anyone else want anything to add to that? Because there's fun, cool, yeah. Respect. Integrity, trust, fantastic. Great list of things. Brilliant. Empathy. Fantastic. So how do you think you would feel if you worked in a team that showed those values on a daily basis? Sounds pretty awesome to me. Yeah? Maybe. Okay. I want a show of hands, honest show of hands. How many people experience those shared values on a daily basis? That kind of level from your teams. Brilliant. Some people do. Fantastic. Cool. That's great.
I experienced the opposite.
It's the opposite. Let's talk a little bit about that. So, so sorry for that. I realise the text is quite small, so sorry about that at the back. It's using a bigger projector. You can always come closer if you want. There's a guy called Robert Waldinger, who's the director of Harvard's study of adult development. He's been on this, well, the survey is 75 years old. It's the oldest survey out there. He's not the only director I've ever had. He's not 104. He's the third one. It started in 1938 with 600 people. And they've been doing a survey every year with this group of people. And what the conclusion they come to is, good relationships keep us happier and healthier. Those people who experience good relationships, or close relationships, and the good quality relationships, not quantity of those relationships, are the healthiest and happiest people. Tend to live a little bit longer too, a bit happier as they go. And also people who are in stable, supportive marriages. So actually they're not in heavy conflict around that as well. So those kind of feelings they've got. While society places a lot of emphasis on wealth and leaning into our work, what they've shown is people who fare the best lean into their relationships with family, friends, and with the community. I'm not sure everyone's done that in the past. I know I've probably not lent into relationships as much as I could have done in the past, potentially. And there's people called Julie and John Gottman who've done some stuff. They set up something called the Love Lab, right? They looked at how married couples got on their relationship, and from that they found quite a lot of things about relationships. In fact, so much so, they found that pretty much 69% of relationship issues are perpetual. You're never going to solve them. You have to work with them. But also, they can predict with 91% accuracy if a relationship would last or not, because they looked at the interaction between people. And what they found was that sexual relationships have these in common. A 5-to-1 ratio of positive to negative interactions, increasing positive interactions during conflict, and reducing negative interactions during conflict when you do conflict. Okay? So those things help have healthy relationships. He did identify 4 aspects of relationships which aren't good. In fact, he called them toxins, relationship toxins, and in fact, go as far as giving them the name of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse for relationships. The 4 relationship toxins are around blame or criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. So these kind of things will really, really toxic to relationships. In fact, they're too much so that the relationship will just break up or not work effectively. So maybe with these things, your team should be aware of them. Just be aware when they're using them. They're not going on. So it sounds like quite a few of you work in healthy teams, which is great. Blame or criticism. A complaint addresses a specific issue, but actually blame, you might hear, you didn't tell me about the meeting. Oh, okay, that's sort of a you applied to that. And people who are critical have an unmet want or need. And often we make our own stories up about these things and don't enter the facts. You tell yourself a story about something maybe, I don't know if you've had that before. Oh, this may be true because of this. You make up that story that maybe you have to get under to get the facts. So that kind of thing about telling an event, you could say, apologise and antidote to that. So I'm sorry about that. Would you like to add these kind of events to a company calendar for us? Would that help us address this issue in the future? It's kind of a better way to get a more positive outcome in your relationship as well. If you came back with a statement, well, yeah, you didn't tell me you wanted to go, sort of more with a defensive stance, that's not really going to help a positive relationship going forward. The other one is defensiveness, defending one's position and not wanting to move forward with that as well. Sometimes we defend ourselves in an attempt to be understood. And if you want to deal with that defensiveness, an antidote might be just ask for clarification. I'm hearing that you say I'm not trustworthy. Can you clarify that? And also attempt sort of understand that maybe there's 2% of the truth in that statement as well. Someone's saying, oh, okay. If there's 2% truth, maybe it's true I don't leave time for unpredictable delays. And maybe that does make me look untrustworthy, but it's probably not, I'm not untrustworthy, it's just maybe I don't leave time for that. So think about, if you rather than being defensive, think about that 2% truth in that potentially. And if your partner is getting defensive, format some active listening. So you actually just sit and listen to people, be empathetic about it, just helps as well if people are being defensive. Or ask them what you heard them say, just to repeat again what they say. So those things might help defensiveness. The worst one is contempt. Relationships. If that's happening, just really got to call them out on it. Say, look, hey man, call out. I'm starting to get angry. It's about me. You don't say you, just say I. I'm starting to get angry. I don't like it when people call me names. Can we work this out like friends? You're not giving a solution, you're offering an option to talk about that as well. Try avoiding like the you statements. It kind of looks at a blame. And if you are using sarcasm or cynicism, you don't need to be using that. There are other ways of trying to be funny. So you can, don't just say it's part of my makeup. Actually, this one can do considerable damage to a relationship, and generally contempt's because you don't talk about things often enough or don't service things. You're kind of sat dwelling on things. Stonewalling. So that's when you just cut off communications, really. You don't have to be talking. So if you are stonewalling, so maybe you might be flooded. Sometimes people get flooded when they're in a conversation. It means just so much emotion, they can't actually cognitively process anything. So sometimes you maybe take a little bit of time out around that. And maybe there's a fear of you speaking. What is that? What's sat behind that fear? What part of your identity is at stake behind that as well? And also differentiate between fear and anger or actual danger involved in doing something. There's fear in doing something and danger in doing something. If it's just actually fear, maybe look at that. If you're stonewalling, it's toxic because there's no way to move forward jointly. So some antidotes, we talked about these. Make requests, 2% of the truth, ventilate, which is basically just vent the conversation. Take some time out. Notice rather than interpret. Be curious about other people and their concerns. Find common ground and articulate emotions around that too. Some of the things to think about. Okay. Also, here's some stuff here about not feeling valued. So people like to feel valued, feel belonging, those relationships. So some things that might be against that, we just talked about this earlier on. So not being treated unfairly, not feeling appreciated, not listening to hard work, unrealistic deadlines, all those things can undermine people's value of feeling valued. Okay. Personal fuel. Now I asked you earlier on about an event in your life that made you feel, that made you what you are today. How many of you don't have to put your hands up if you don't want to, I sort of request really, how many of you had a large set of emotion through that, or a deep set of emotion when that happened, that big thing, event that changed their life, right? Emotion creates a massive pool of energy for people, okay? Sometimes we work with teams, we do journey lines. This is my journey, kind of after university. There's a big dip here. Things didn't go very well, not well at all. Actually, generally after most dips, there's an upward curve afterwards, and that dip there pretty much drives what I do today. I was part of a team that was overworked, very stressed, and actually that, I don't want to happen to other people anymore. That drives what I do. So that's a good thing, but actually down in there, we're not very productive. And also we're not very creative either, and creative is what a lot of people want these days. So energy is good, emotion's good, but there's the right kind of emotion that gives that fuel ongoing. So progress on meaningful work, hopefully we'll get the right kind of emotions going to get an ongoing kind of view on things. Actually get negative emotion, it draws you down quite a lot. So trying to keep an upbeat view on things. People are most motivated in their jobs based on sort of this research back in 1968 if they give them an opportunity to explore achievement. So progress and one step forward really, really helps. So hence all the metric stuff we're talking about really help people give a view of progress. And there's a couple of people from Harvard again, done some research on the power of small wins. If there's a book called the Harvard Business Review, 10 best reads on teams. One of them is a short article on the power of small wins. These guys looked at over 200 individuals of about 15 companies, and they looked at good days and bad days. And good days progressed, steps forward occurred on 76% of those, and setbacks hardly at all. So what they found was generally good days create a positive inner work life. If you get a positive inner work life, you're going to be more productive going forward too. Okay? Negative events send people down quite a long way from their journaling, and actually put them down quite a way, and it took off time to get them back up again, and they weren't so productive or creative as part of that. So things that demotivate they found were, for the team, confusing your long-term goals. So all this stuff just repeats, right? Same stuff we had, this is sort of a recent thing about 2010, repeats the stuff that Hackman brought up and other people brought up before. Constraint of ownership, lacking resources, punishing failure, and some personal toxins, things we just talked about from Gottman's research as well. So all those things sort of give a negative things that demotivate progress. Now, these are the things you want to try and invigorate. For a team level, these are the seven biggest catalysts they found. Setting clear goals, allowing autonomy, providing resources, giving enough time but not too much. Team helping with each other with work, they come up really supportive, helping each other out. So a lot of that is around, if you think about Scrum, it's around about helping each other in the team out. It's collective teamwork. Learning from problems and successes, allowing ideas to flow and not cutting people down. So if you can encourage these things in your team and encourage the support for these things too, hopefully you're going to get sort of more positive progress on things. From a personal perspective, they found there's some real nourishers as well that kind of help people forward. So 4 major nourishers they found: respect, encouragement from each other. Dealing with people with honesty is a big thing, bringing yourself to work. Emotional support, just listening, feeling valued, a bit of empathy behind that too. And some affiliation, actions that build bonds of trust. So the big thing was about providing opportunities to acquaint people coming face to face, even if you're working remotely, build some social capital. I think everyone was talking about yesterday. Those bonds improve the flow of ideas and should increase collaboration, creativity, and ideas. So encouraging those things in your teams too. And obviously discouraging the team toxins. What they did find was the power of negative events was 3 times as much as a bigger event to bring people down, really. So pretty much the 5-to-1 principle sets again, as Gottman brought up. The more negative events will bring you down a bit longer. So if it does happen to your team, just recognise they won't be coming and waving the flag the next day. Potentially it's going to take a little bit of time to get over that. They're just human, right? That's how we react to these kind of things. So small actions to remove obstacles, impeding the progress of individuals, can make a big difference. So as a coach, maybe you're a Scrum Master, talk about removing impediments. I don't think any of this research is available to those guys who put the patterns together, but pretty much if you're moving the blockers, it should help overall performance because you get a more positive inner work life you're trying to cultivate. Work-life balance. So should there be a balance between work and life? Is it not the whole life together anyway, right? The fact you come to work is a big part of your life. So why not make sure you behave at work as you do at home? And don't try and leave yourself, so keep the two separate. Bring your whole self to work. Balance relationships and nourishment of work to prevent that overspill I talked about. So maybe if you're not getting that support at work, what happens is you bring it home. My wife works from home. Probably doesn't get enough appreciation for what she does. And she brings that to the family. And my kids go, oh, Mum's in a bad mood again today. She's brought that home. It doesn't really help the whole thing end to end. So bring yourself as a whole to work and think about what you need as well. That nourishment and relationships are really important. So if you're not getting that work, encourage people to get better, closer, higher quality relationships. So Google do an awful lot of research around this, right? So you got loads of stuff around teams. They do all the housekeeping stuff I've just given you, do all that. And they went, okay, so what's the difference between that team? There are some teams that are really, really massively high performing. Why is that? And they did a survey, a few teams they've really focused on. What they found was a big thing was that group norms were the big thing. Norms of behavior, so how they operate together. So the same thing I just asked you to do, those values are the biggest important thing they had that really, really made the biggest difference between those teams. This only came out in March this year, by the way, so it's worth a read. Project Aristotle, Google Team Review, New York Times Magazine. I'll put these slides up on the SlideShare and I'll share them for the conference anyway. And the best teams, members listen to each other, show sensitivity to feelings and needs, and show empathy as well. So, ways to drop your armour. So another thing, few things that maybe you can use with your teams. Dropping your armour at work and bringing your whole self to work. Things like personal journeys and what event made you what you are today. Share that with your team. You've thought about it now. Ask them to share the same thing as well. I'd ask permission about this first, by the way. Teams do enjoy it, but ask them first. Build some social capital. Go out for drinks, beer, lunch. Create psychological safety, that ability to share what they're feeling at work. And create and enforce working agreements or design team alliances. They're really important. Those values I asked you to put together, put those out for your team and make sure they live them daily as well. So for those working agreements, Hackman put some rules around that as well. So the most critical rules pertain to, if you're putting one of these together, think about attendance, no interruptions, take phone calls, discussion, no sacred cows, confidentiality, the only thing that leaves the room is the things we agree on, not a conversation before, and an analytic approach. Sacred cows, that big elephant in the room that you can't talk about. Yeah. So bring those up too. An analytical approach. End-to-end, end product oriented. Everyone gets assignments and does them. No finger pointing. Everyone does real work. So all those kind of things. If you do a working agreement, those are the kind of things you want to include in that as well. People. Okay. So, almost on time, we've completed. So maybe just either I can take questions or think to yourself, or maybe in the small groups again, what are your key takeaways from today and what actions you're going to take based on what you've learned? Okay. Well, it sounds like you're doing a personal reflection there, which is fine. Okay. So any questions? I'll give you a little more time to think then, because I'll give you a small plug. We've started doing some work relationship coaching. There's an organisation called ORSC, which is probably the most amazing people I've ever met before. They're associated with the coactive coaching community, CTI. Lisa Atkins, have you heard of Lisa Atkins? Okay, so she worked quite closely with them. They're called Organisation and Relationship Systems Coaching, ORSC, and they run courses here in the UK. We've got together with them to run a more agile-focused 2-day session in July. If you're interested, come along to that. Otherwise, they do have 2-day introductions anyway on their website. Go on and have a look there. CR UK Arlo Co schedule. You can find that there. And also, if you want to see where your teams aren't going so well, we've got a team assessment tool around that as well. So any other questions?
Yeah. I've been looking at meaning as well.
Okay.
And thinking about it, it occurred to me that I think a lot of people derive meaning from their work in very different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wonder whether you think it's important that teams or members of teams get their meanings in similar ways, or whether you can leave that to each individual team member to work out for themselves.
I think it'd be nice to have a collective meaning behind it, something they can all stand behind as a group. But I think the personal meaning as well should play into that, as everyone's different, have their own personal view. And I think people's personal goals, so I add it kind of as well, what are they trying to achieve and how can the team support them is pretty important too, to find out more inclusion.
So for some people it's the work itself, for some people it's what the work enables for them, perhaps even in their family lives rather than work.
Yeah.
And are we, should we criticise that or not?
One thing I wouldn't do is give any judgment about team members. I think that's the biggest thing, and actually just trying to get.
We'll think negatively about that.
Everyone's different, right?
Exactly.
Everybody's different, and whatever works for them works for them. So I think I'd want to make sure they understand what's working for them, and they understand what drives them as well, and maybe encourage them to get some personal coaching on that perspective, so they can explore a bit more about what is meaningful to them, and that might give them a bit more energy to draw on for the team as well.
Yeah, I think you mentioned just sharing that personal journey me versus what motivates you. You know, I might not think in your terms, but then just being aware of, oh, Mike's motivated by having, you know, an interesting little technical task or something like that. Then I can, doesn't apply to me, but I can work better as a teammate with you. So
Yeah. A bit of empathy, understanding about how what people are about as well really helps it sort of build that relationship. Definitely. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. That's all right.
A lot of this is focusing on teams that really want to work well. Have you ever had a scenario where there's a person who just want to get them off the team? You want to get them. Because I think a lot of people hit it, and there is that point of how much do you take and how many times do I go around this person trying every technique I know to get them to want to play nice and want to control them in that way. Because that's how it kind of feels. Have you ever had that kind of scenario? Did you deal with it any other way apart from via each other?
That's why I spent the last couple of years doing some coaching, to training really around this stuff. But I think the thing about that, it's so poisonous. It brings all these other toxins to the team, drags the whole team down, and goes. There's a massive impact on the team. But yeah, if things aren't working, I might have to go the HR route around that. Yeah. Does anyone else want to add anything? I'll throw this to the group. Right?
Yeah,
it's a tough one.
Somebody asked the same question yesterday when I was talking about teams, and I think you need to tends to. I mean, there can be any cause for these things, right? And I have worked in a team exactly like that. In fact, I was IT director of a company, and on one of the development teams, there was one person who said they were doing something, and then it turned out they weren't, and then the rest of the team got annoyed with them, and then he carried on doing it, and the team tried everything. And in the end, I just had a chat with them and said, look, you understand what's happening here, right? The team are really pissed off with you. They're probably not going to stop being pissed off with you. What do you want to do about that?
You were the boss, right?
Yeah.
So did higher up you made the influences?
Probably, yeah, he left.
Right.
And then he got another much better job. And then when I became a freelancer or a consultant, he hired me in to come do some teamwork with him. So,
that's a
I
nice
didn't
outcome,
leave.
isn't it?
I didn't tell him to leave. I mean, what I did was I just reflected the situation to him and said, look, this is what's happening. This is what's happening.
Yeah.
It's happening from your perspective.
And a lot of those things might reflect they're not very happy. And actually people have got their own choices to make. If they're not happy, what on earth are they doing coming along doing that? Yeah. Do something
I
else.
think it's similar, but the guy, as you said before, as you're in your home life and your work environment, but this guy was really quite bad in the work environment. It turned out in the home environment was exactly the same. He was also a control freak at work and at home.
Yeah.
Those sort of people.
Encourage them to get some personal coaching maybe.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
You can have people who are control freaks, but don't give you enough information either to do the job.
Yeah.
And
Sometimes.
so they micromanage, but then and they don't tell you anything. And then ask, why haven't you got it done?
Thank you very much.
You're trying to
Okay.
optimise the whole technology, and you can only put so much effort into one person with them that need to change. It's a quote from the guy at Apple, the whole of my team, an arsehole of my team.
I think it's really important just to reflect back to, you know, it's not up to you to come up with a solution. Nor, if you're a coach, it's up to you to come up with a solution. It's up to you to reflect back what you're seeing to the whole team, to the individuals in that team, and ask them what they want to do.
So we've been asked to finish up, I think, for the next session. Obviously, starting in a couple of minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you.